Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the world of precious metals today, specifically silver.
Ooh, silver. Sounds shiny.
It is, quite literally. But there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, especially when you consider the geopolitical landscape. And our guide for this deep dive is John Lee, chairman of Silver Elephant Mining.
Sounds like a pretty credible source.
Absolutely. He's got 25 years in the silver market, 20 in the mining industry, and has raised over $120 million for resource companies. So yeah, he knows his stuff. We found this fascinating interview he did with Silver Bullion TV, and it's got us thinking.
I'm intrigued. What kind of things?
Well, for starters, there's this whole paradox around silver's value. You've got reports showing a deficit demand exceeding supply, and we're talking potentially just 2 years worth of above-ground supply left.
Okay, that sounds pretty serious.
It is, especially when you consider how many industries rely on silver, like solar panels and EVs. It's just increasing.
So wouldn't you expect the price to be skyrocketing?
You'd think so, right? But it's not. That's where things get interesting. John Lee argues that the real driver is investment demand, not just industrial use. And he even goes so far as to say that silver, just like gold, is being manipulated.
Manipulated. Now, how is that possible?
He points to practices like naked short selling as one of the ways the price is kept artificially low.
Naked short selling. It sounds a bit, risky.
It can be. Essentially, it's selling shares you don't actually own, hoping to buy them back later at a lower price.
I see. So how does this play out in the silver market?
Well, he uses the COMEX futures market as an example. You see 50,000 contracts traded every day, each representing 5,000 ounces of silver.
Wow, that's a lot of silver changing hands.
It is. 250 million ounces daily, to be precise. More than the entire annual global production.
Hold on. So if every trade actually involved physical silver, we'd be running out in a matter of days.
Exactly. And that's Lee's point. A lot of this trading is purely speculative, not actually backed by physical silver.
So what does that mean for the average investor, or even the mining companies themselves?
Well, as Lee puts it, this manipulation prevents mining companies from reaping the profits they should be making and even scares off potential investors.
Right, because if the price is artificially low, it disincentivizes investment in the whole sector.
Precisely. And this brings us to the nickel crisis of 2022, a cautionary tale that Lee uses to highlight the dangers of a manipulated market.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Nickel prices went crazy, didn't they?
They did, shot up 5-fold in just 2 days on the London Metal Exchange, a classic short squeeze.
The short squeeze, right? So when a lot of people bet on the price going down, but it suddenly shoots up.
They're forced to buy to cover their positions, which pushes the price even higher.
And in that case, the London Metal Exchange had to step in, halt trading, and settle trades at a much lower price. Ouch. A lot of people must have lost a lot of money.
You can say that again. And Lee's warning that something similar could happen with silver, too. Imagine if the price suddenly surges.
Those holding ETFs or futures contracts could be left high and dry.
Exactly. And that's why he's such a big advocate for holding physical silver, especially numismatic coins like Canadian maple leafs or American eagles.
Numismatic coins.
Basically, collector's items, valued for their rarity and historical significance, not just their silver content. They tend to hold their value better in times of crisis.
Interesting. So we've got limited supply and concerns about market manipulation.
But there's another factor Lee says could significantly impact silver's price, one that always makes things a bit more, shall we say, unpredictable: geopolitics. And he doesn't exactly paint a rosy picture.
Geopolitics, huh? I'm all ears. What's he saying?
He sees East-West relations, particularly between the U.S. and China, as going downhill and fast. He even goes so far as to describe the war in Ukraine as a proxy war for global influence.
A proxy war. That's a chilling thought.
And he argues that these escalating global tensions actually benefit silver and gold as safe haven assets.
That makes sense. In times of uncertainty, investors often flock to what's seen as stable.
Right. And the picture he paints of the current situation is, well, a little unsettling. He talks about flight paths being rerouted to avoid potential conflict zones, increased military activity around Taiwan.
So he's basically saying the world is on edge.
Pretty much. He even says the world is on a knife's edge, quite literally.
Wow. This is heavy stuff. Makes you think, doesn't it? What does it all mean for us, for the future?
Well, that's what we're going to try to unpack today with John Lee's insights as our guide.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dig deeper.
Absolutely.
It's really striking how Lee connects the silver market to what's happening in the actual mining industry.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat it at all, does he? He makes it very clear that the way the market is right now, it's hurting mining companies.
It seems kind of backward, right? Like, would
What?
low silver prices make it easier to mine and make a profit?
You'd think. But Lee's point is because the price is artificially low, the companies aren't getting enough revenue to actually invest in exploring for more silver or even just developing the mines they have. He said they're basically barely scraping by.
And that lack of profit, well, it makes investors nervous, doesn't it? Makes them think twice about putting money into silver mining.
Totally. It's a vicious cycle. Manipulation keeps prices low, which discourages investment, which limits supply, which, you guessed it, helps keep those prices down. And then on top of that, there's something else Lee brought up that's a bit unsettling, to say the least. Did you catch what he said about how algorithms are affecting the stock market?
Oh, yeah, that was kind of freaky. He
Yeah.
said 80% of trades are being made by algorithms, not actual people.
80%. Think about that for a second. It makes you wonder just how much control we really have.
It definitely raises some questions about whether things are really fair or transparent in the market if robots are making most of the decisions.
Right. And Lee believes these algorithms are part of the problem, used to further suppress those mining stock prices.
So how do we even begin to figure this out if we're thinking about investing in silver? It seems like so much is going on behind the scenes.
Well, that's where I think Lee's perspective is so helpful. He brings these hidden dynamics to light so we can understand what's really going on. He talked about how the typical silver investor isn't the same as the typical mining investor anymore.
That's interesting. How so?
He said the big players in silver right now are billionaires and institutions looking to protect their wealth. They see it as a hedge against things like inflation or governments messing things up.
That makes sense. Silver and gold have always been seen as safe havens, right?
Exactly. But here's the thing. These big investors aren't interested in putting money into those small mining companies. They're looking for large, liquid investments.
So the demand for silver isn't actually helping the companies that are producing it. It's like a disconnect.
You got it. And Lee thinks this won't change until silver prices hit a certain point. He mentioned something like $40 to $50 an ounce. Only then will those mining companies actually have enough money to attract serious investment.
So he's basically saying the market needs to break free from all that manipulation so the mining industry can actually thrive. It sounds like it could be a huge turning point for the whole precious metals market if that happens. But this whole conversation about manipulation and algorithms makes you think bigger, doesn't it? Like, how much influence do we actually have on our investments, and what should the regulators be doing about all of this?
Big questions for sure, especially now with technology changing the financial world so fast. But going back to Lee, there was another thing he talked about that really resonated with me, about how the world is becoming more and more fragmented.
Yeah, he didn't paint a very pretty picture, did he? All those restricted flight paths, those proxy wars, the idea of major countries actually going to war with each other. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, a bit sobering for sure. He even mentioned how a lot of the weapons being used in Ukraine actually have American electronics in them, despite all the sanctions.
That one stuck with me too. It's like, even when we're trying to keep things separate, it shows how connected everything really is.
And then he talked about how these geopolitical tensions are directly impacting the flow of goods around the world. Do you remember that example he gave about vanadium?
Vanadium. Remind me what that is again.
It's a metal that's really important for making certain types of steel, the strong kind, and also stuff for aerospace. Lee said Russia is actually exporting it to China through these secret back channels to get around the sanctions.
It shows how markets can adapt, right?
Yeah.
Finding ways to make things work, even when the usual ways are blocked.
That's true, but I think it also shows how fragile things are, especially when you think about what happens if those relationships between those powerful countries keep breaking down.
Exactly. Like Lee was saying, we could see essential goods becoming scarce, leading to shortages and prices going way up. We've seen glimpses of that already with the pandemic and now with what's happening in Ukraine.
It's like he's saying, get ready for a bumpy ride, a world where the old rules just don't work anymore. So back to the idea of money itself, how does this all fit in?
Well, even though Lee doesn't think the BRICS nations will create a new global currency anytime soon, he sees their efforts as a sign that people are losing faith in the dollar.
And he thinks this trend will just keep growing. More and more countries will be looking for ways to protect their money and rely less on the dollar. He even mentioned Japan, how they're really tied to the dollar and what huge losses they could face if it goes down.
It reminds us that nothing stays the same forever, even in finance. What we think is safe and stable today might not be so tomorrow.
And that's where gold comes back into the picture, right? Lee sees it as that timeless asset that holds its value, something real you can hold on to when currencies are going crazy. It's not just a promise from a government, it's something tangible.
He made an interesting comparison to that Bretton Woods system that fell apart back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, when they tried to peg the dollar to gold and it just didn't work out. Lee sees parallels between that and what could happen with today's dollar-dominated system.
Makes you think, are we watching a whole new monetary order take shape right now?
That's the million-dollar question Lee leaves us with, and something worth considering as we try to make sense of these uncertain times.
Absolutely. Lee's perspective gives us a lot to think about regarding precious metals and really the whole global financial system. But for someone listening who's thinking about getting into silver, what practical advice did Lee offer?
Well, he was really adamant about doing your homework before you choose a dealer, especially if you're thinking about buying physical silver.
Makes sense.
He said to watch out for those places offering membership pricing or deals that just sound too good to be true.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
He's seen it all, and he really doesn't want people to get ripped off. He said to stick with reputable dealers, maybe start small, and don't be afraid to ask for inspection reports.
Build that trust first.
Exactly, especially if you're going to invest a lot of money. He even told this story about Perth Mint, that company that got in trouble for selling allocated storage at prices that just weren't adding up.
It goes to show how important it is to have transparency and accountability in this market.
Absolutely, and I really respect that he was clear that he doesn't get any kind of kickbacks or endorsements from any particular dealer.
Right, he just wants people to be informed.
He does. He just wants people to make smart choices. Hearing all of this, I keep thinking about that everyday person who's just trying to figure things out, trying to protect their savings.
It's a lot to take in, right? All the news, all the different opinions.
It can be overwhelming. And while I think Lee's insights are really valuable, it's important to remember he's just one person.
He's got his perspective.
Right. So we always say, do your own research, talk to people you trust, and make decisions that feel right for you.
Diversification is key, and precious metals definitely have a place in a well-rounded portfolio.
Agreed. But don't go all in thinking you'll get rich quick or that it's some kind of magic bullet.
No, definitely not.
Lee stressed that this is a long game and to be prepared for ups and downs along the way. He even said, don't bet the farm.
Sound advice. It's about protecting your wealth, not chasing the next big thing.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into silver and, well, the state of the world, I'm feeling, I guess you could say, cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic. I like that.
On the one hand, we've got a lot to be concerned about, right? The economy's shaky, things are tense between countries, and who knows what's happening with the old financial system.
It's a lot.
But on the other hand, there are opportunities. Lee's right. Precious metals can offer a way to protect ourselves.
And if we stay informed, if we're flexible, if we're proactive, we can weather the storm.
I truly believe that. We can come out stronger.
Yeah.
And to our listener, John Lee believes we're at the beginning of a major shift, a whole new world where the old rules are being thrown out and there are new possibilities waiting to be discovered.
New possibilities.
The question is, are you ready?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. See you next time.